Welcome back to the channel, everybody, for episode 6 of the Ranch Motorcycle Podcast. I am your host, Mike, and in this episode, we are going to go through my top 5 list for 2025. The motorcycles that cost around $5,000. That's $5,000 US, and this applies to motorcycles that are in the US market because I don't live anywhere else but America. If you're watching overseas, I apologize, but I'm pretty sure most of these models are available in other countries, so it might still apply to you, just different price ranges. So bear that in mind. The reason why I chose the bikes that are in the list is because they meet several of 4 criteria that I'm looking at. Criteria number 1, it's a full-size bike. It's not like a Honda Gram. It's not one of these smaller bikes, which are still really fun to ride. It doesn't matter what the motor size is. I'm talking about the physical dimensions of the bike. You know, I'm a 6 foot tall dude. I'm 220 pounds. Yeah, I have to fit on the motorcycle. For me, that's considered like a full-size bike, not by engine displacement. So that's criteria 1. Criteria 2, it has to be from a well-established brand. And what I mean by that is, if you take this bike on a trip, are you going to be able to get it serviced somewhere? Is there a dealer network? Not everybody wants to take their bikes to a dealership. I get that. A lot of people want to wrench on their own stuff. If you don't have the skill to do that, or if you're taking a long cross-country trip, you need to be able to get the motorcycle repaired while you're on your trip, or you're going to have a horrible time, right? That's just the way it is. So that went into my decision on what bikes make the list. And again, this is my opinion, and I'm sure people will disagree with it and have their own opinions. That's fine. This is just my opinion based upon my experience as a service advisor, even with brands that we don't sell at the dealership I work at. Criteria number 3, these bikes have to be around $5,000. Now, most of the bikes on my list are at $5,000 as of 2025 US dollar as the MSRP. A couple of bikes are a little iffy because I've seen them at $5,000. I've also seen them slightly above $5,000. But as the time about recording this, the prices are what they're listed online. Criteria number 4, it has to be current production as of the 2025 model year. If it's carryover from previous years like 23, 24, as long as it's still in production, that's all concerns me to be on the list. The bike was discontinued in 2024. It doesn't make the list. The main reason for that is that I want something that you can get serviced into the future and no worry about the cutoff parts availability, because there are possible bikes that you could find out there that are still new, new old stock as it were, that may be 2021s or 22s or 23s that are still in dealer inventory as unsold bikes. They're usually pretty attractive to buy because they have huge incentives from the dealership and possibly the manufacturer. But to be on the list, it has to be a current 2025 model year. Number 5 on my list. This bike barely made the list because depending upon when I checked it last, it was either at the $5,000 mark or slightly over it. I think now it's slightly over it, but it is the 2025 Triumph Speed 400. It is a really cool retro standard, riding position bike, and it is a full-size motorcycle. It is very cool. Here, Triumph is listing the Speed 400 at $5,195. Based upon my criteria, one of the things that made this number 5 versus being number 4, other than the price not being right at $5,000 or under, it doesn't have as well established dealer network as some of the other brands we're going to talk about here. However, Triumph makes a very reliable bike. My wife happens to have a Triumph Speedmaster. It's a 2007, runs like a top. I used to have an old Triumph Speed 4. Again, excellent motorcycle. I've known other people who've owned Triumphs. You could put a lot of miles on a Triumph, and I'm sure that the Speed 400 is going to be no exception. Got 39.5 horsepower, which is really good for the size of the motor. I've got a classic 350 Royal Enfield, which we'll talk about here soon, and it makes like 20 horsepower, and it's a 350. So this is a pretty stout bike for a small engine. 375 pounds, so it's a pretty light bike for what it is. It's fuel injected. It's a single cylinder, 4-valve, double overhead cam. It's a pretty modern bike. You really can't go wrong with it, and the styling is just spectacular. Let's get back to the model here. You got a couple of different color options. You got the red and silver. You got probably the blue and silver, and then you got your blacked out version of it. You got the inverted fork. It's a pretty modern bike. Like I said, this thing should have ranked much higher in my list if it wasn't for the fact of the goofy pricing and the dealer availability. Parts are easy to get on this. I can tell you, based upon older Triumphs, I've never had an issue getting parts from companies like Revzilla, not sponsored by the way, Parts Unlimited. There's tons of retailers that sell OEM parts, and also the dealership. You can get parts for older Triumphs from the dealership. They keep a good back catalog of parts. So I wouldn't hesitate to buy a Triumph again at all. They're wonderful bikes, and I have not ridden this bike yet, but it is very cool, and I'm looking forward to maybe one day taking one for a test ride because it's the right price for the right size, and it makes really good power. I bet you that thing is a ball to ride. So number 4 in my list of bikes here is going to be any of the Royal Enfields with the 350 single. It's their J series engine. I'm going to go with the cheapest one, which is going to be your Hunter 350. And realistically, I would say between 4th and 5th place, the J Series Royal Enfields and the Triumphs were neck and neck. For me, it was almost a dead heat tie between Triumph and Royal Enfield here, between the bikes. I think Triumph's got a better dealer network. Disclaimer, the dealership I work for sells Royal Enfield. So I have personal experience as a service advisor. If you have a good dealer, you don't really have issues with Royal Enfield. And I think if you've ever watched Itchy Boots videos, she rode a Royal Enfield Himalayan 411, the outgoing model, for hundreds of thousands of kilometers. Just beat the hell out of a couple of them. Rode across like India and through the Middle East. It was pretty crazy. And the bike just kept going. So they are very reliable, and the Hunter's going to be comparable to that Triumph, but it's cheaper. That's how it beat it out by like this much. Just about as difficult to find a dealership for Triumph as it is for Royal Enfield. I think Triumph dealerships tend to be a little bit more well established, where some of the Royal Enfield dealers are proper dealerships like our dealership that I work at, or they're kind of like strip mall places that also sell Chinese like off-brand bikes and scooters and stuff like that. So, I could have tossed a coin, honestly, but the thing that made the Royal Enfield win out was the availability of multiple bikes for the price. You start out with the Hunter 350 here, you're talking $3,900. So now you're $1,000 under that $5,000 mark. And it's not like you're getting $1,000 crappier, motorcycle that's crappier for the $1,000 less. It's still a really cool bike. They're fun to ride. They're light. I know they make 20 horsepower. All these J Series motors makes around 20 horsepower. And grab another J Series. Realistically, almost all of these J Series bikes has a very similar frame, like backbone. Very little differences in the rake and trail and wheelbase of the bike. Realistically, what they've done is very clever. They've made the tail section of the frame and the subframe that goes underneath the motor, which is actually not part of the actual chassis. It's really there to hold up the pegs. The Hunter doesn't even have a frame portion that goes under the bike because the motor is a stressed part of the frame on these bikes. All of these J Series bikes are very similar. They all have 20 horsepower engines. You're going to be like your Hunter 350. Meteor 350 is going to be the next most affordable bike in the lineup. So they give us some specs on here. See, it's 20 horsepower and then 20 newton meters of torque if you want to convert that to foot-pounds, but it's around 20 horsepower. You're going to be into your classic, which is what we've got. We've got the bronze and chrome classic 350. $46.99 gets you the kind of the blacked out gunmetal gray. Exactly the same price. You want to go with the military paint scheme, and it actually looks pretty cool. You're up in price, $4,700 for the chrome red. Our bike Hazel. I have this very bike myself, so I can speak from firsthand experience that it's a fun bike to ride. Don't plan on going faster than about 70 miles an hour on this bike if you're a 6 foot tall, 220 pound dude like myself. There are plenty of mods available for this bike in the aftermarket, which is another reason why it won out slightly above the Triumph. That and the price. Those two are what kicked it one place in front of Triumph, in my opinion. Again, this is just my opinion. Royal Enfield in the past, I don't know, I say 5 to 10 years has really built a strong dealer network in the US, but they're not everywhere yet. So the last model you're going to have here is going to be the Bullet. And honestly, the Bullet and the Classic are almost the same bike. The only difference is going to be the frame section in the back. This little bit, the rear fender's more squared off, and the pillion or the passenger pad on the seat it's one bench seat, instead of being two separate seats. It's a dead heat tie for third place on here. Similar engines, I think it might even be the same motor. Correct me if I'm wrong on that one. But you got the Honda Rebel 300, which is going to be more of a cruiser. It's also, I think, the lightest bike in the lineup here. Its bulletproof reliability is the reason why that sucker is number 3 on my list. You got a huge, well-established dealer network out there in the United States, possibly the world. I think they're in a dead heat between Yamaha and BMW when it comes worldwide dealer networks. I mean, it's a Honda. If you know anything about motorcycles, you know Honda's just run. This bike's been in production for a while, so there are lots of options. There's lots of stuff you can get for it. You can turn this thing into a pretty decent little cross-country bike. I'm not going to go through all the specs for these bikes. You can look this up. There are going to be other people who have actually ridden them and done reviews. This is supposed to be a quick list. Now, when I said that Honda had 2 bikes tied for number 3, I meant it. So even though this is the top 5 list for my own personal picks for new bikes to get into if you're a new rider for 2025, there's actually 2 from Honda, and I couldn't make up my mind, so I'm going to put them both in here. CBR 300R. Now, this is more of a sport bike. If you're more into a standard cruiser, you go with the Rebel 300. If you're looking to get into more of a sport bike in the future, you go for that CBR. $48.99 is a really good price. Again, under $5,000. I think it's probably a similar motor. I don't know if they're the exact same engine or not. Again, I'm going to recommend that if you want to know more about the bikes, like power and the torque, there's going to be online reviews of this bike. It's not a new model. It's been out for a while, and it gives you the opportunity to look at it. And there's going to be people that have ridden it and done full-on reviews, but it makes it to my list along with the Rebel 300. That pretty much ends it for Honda. I do have an honorable mention for Honda, though, I have to say. You have the CB300 that's at $5,149, which is going to be like right there where the Triumph is, right? The Speed 400 and the CB300 are neck and neck price-wise. And you can tell they're competing with each other. You got the inverted forks, you got radial brakes on here. It's a really cool styled bike. I mean, again, they're in direct competition with each other. But it gets an honorable mention because I have not seen this thing for under $5,000 or even at $5,000. It is always just above it. That kind of threw it off the list. But if you could pony up that extra $100, $200, you're going to be spending a little bit more on it than that anyhow, because you're going to have to pay tax and dealer prep and destination on any of these bikes. Can't believe I'm saying this, but number 2 on this list is a brand I usually call the Bavarian money waster, because usually BMW really hits you with a lot of expense. A lot of their bikes aren't cheap. The base model is $4,995. It just squeaks in underneath that $5,000 mark. Full-size bike. You got inverted forks on it. It's going to be well within the Speed 400 and like the CB300R range. You're going to be plus or minus a couple $100, but they're all aggressively priced to compete with each other. 34 horsepower. There you go. We're making some good power. 20.6 pound-feet of torque. I haven't ridden this bike because we haven't had one come through the dealership I work at yet, but I would really love to take one for a ride. BMW has BMW technology. They like to push the envelope, and this bike is really cool. You've got quite a few color options. I do dig the red, white, and blue color scheme here. If I was going to buy one, I'd probably get that color scheme. BMW has a very well-established dealer network in the United States and also worldwide. I don't think they have as much penetration worldwide as Honda does. It's still a pretty damn big dealer network, so this is something you can take, and ride around the world if you wanted to. Though, again, I would never recommend riding such a small bike that's not an adventure bike around the world. Check out that BMW, the G310R. That thing is pretty sweet. I don't think you're going to be disappointed. That bike will definitely serve you well. So coming in at number one with a bullet is going to be the Yamaha MT-03. It is right at $5,000. It's $4,999, and it is a cool bike. You are getting a lot of bike for this money. With all these bikes, it's a full-size bike for a dude my size to ride it. Brand new, $5,000. It's really good value for the money. You get Yamaha blue, it's traditional. We can get white with a light blue, and then we can get the all blacked out version of it. So again, we've got an inverted front fork, very similar again to the BMW and the Speed 400. Yamaha has a network everywhere. Yamahas are extremely reliable. It's a cool looking bike. You got a lot of different color options on this bike. It's very cool, aggressive styling. Some people might not dig it. It's got kind of that Japanese Gundam kind of anime styling to it with the Speed 400 and also the Honda. You have a more traditional styling with a round headlight, even though I would call that like retro. This is just a modern performance bike that's kind of like a standard. So you can take this, either way. You can get more into sport bikes after you outgrow this one, or you can get more into an adventure or a cruiser bike. That's the nice thing about a bike that gives you a standard riding position, is that it lets you grow into the sport of riding motorcycles. For sure, the Yamaha is going to retain its resale value, and also you have a huge, well-established dealer network, just like Honda, just like BMW. Yamahas are very reliable, and again, you can find parts online like Revzilla, JMP motorcycles, you name it, online retailers. Even Yamaha, you can buy parts directly online. There are some dealers that sell catalog parts online. You could do the work yourself if you need to in the future once it's out of warranty. Some people like to work on their motorcycles. You always have that option. This is my number one. Have I ridden one? Do I own it? I do not. Again, the only bike on this list that I personally own, not ridden, but own, is going to be the Classic 350. But this bike is super cool. Another honorable mention is going to end up being the Yamaha YZF R3. They've been making this a couple years, so you might find new old stock inventory that's not the 25 model year that'll hit you at that $5,000 mark. It's not on my list because for 2025 it's $5,499. This one I have not found any cheaper than $5,499, but you probably could find the 24. You might be able to find that for under $5,000. That's why I didn't make the list. But this is a full-on sport bike, and if you're just getting into sport bike riding, it's going to serve you well for many years. That is my list of 5 for 25, around $5,000. Just a quick recap. We're talking about the Triumph Speed 400. Then we're looking at any of the J Series Royal Enfields. Again, for me, they're kind of neck and neck between the two. Performance-wise, the Speed 400 has it in spades. Those J Series motors, while it's a fun to ride bike, especially if you like classic looking motorcycles that look like something you've restored, but it's brand new with a 3-year warranty, Royal Enfield's the way to go. But if you're looking for all out performance, it's hard to beat that Speed 400 is just so sick. I like that bike. It's going to be hard to find one at exactly $5,000 or under. I think it's over, so it might be just squeaking into the list by the skin of its teeth. Then I've got kind of that three-way tie with Honda. You're talking about the Rebel 300. You got the CBR 300, the sport bike, or the CB 300. That's just over that $5,000 mark. Sometimes you'll find dealers that will have it below MSRP, especially like bigger power sport dealers. A lot of times, even with new models, they're going to have those prices a little bit lower than what you see online. So just keep an eye out for it. Then you got the BMW G310 R, really cool bike. It makes really good power. It would be a ball to ride. And then last but not least, my personal pick is going to be the Yamaha MT-03. This is my own list. It's my own opinion on this stuff. I've seen enough Yamahas and Hondas, Kawasaki's, Suzuki's come in and out of the dealership for service, bikes that have been in, traded in for used, and we recondition them. So I get a pretty good feel for how these things kind of hold up over time, which is why I picked the bikes I picked. When it comes to the value for the money that you're getting, serviceability, where you could find dealers, whether you're really going to need to get a lot of service, and also, is it at the $5,000 mark? For Suzuki's and Kawasaki's, they didn't have bikes that made my list because they weren't right at the $5,000 mark. And they didn't even hit the honorable mention because they were significantly more than $5,000. The difference is enough to buy you a helmet, a jacket, and some gloves, and maybe some shoes. Or pay your insurance for the year, or cover the dealer prep and the freight and all that kind of stuff. It does matter when they're that much more expensive. I don't think you can go wrong with any of the five, and I'm sure your guys' opinion on which ones are going to go and which order is going to change based upon your own criteria. It's a list to work off of. You can take these 5 bikes, including the honorable mentions, and you can go and you can look online. People have done plenty of ride reviews. You can make a little list of what you like, what you don't like. You can sort it out, then take that out and go shopping. So anyhow, I hope this helps y'all out. I hope it gives you a target list of something to go out there and look for, and I hope you buy one. The motorcycle industry is kind of in the dirt right now, at least in the USA. Sales are way down across the brand. You can get some really good deals, especially, even though I did a 2025, top 5 here, you could find a 24 or 23 on some of these models where it's been virtually unchanged other than the colors, and get a huge killer deal and have tons of money left over, not just for your riding gear, but for accessories. Like if you want to add some kind of saddlebag or tail bag, something you can take a trip on, or if you just want to get parts to modify it, exhaust parts, because some of those bikes have aftermarket support for parts. So you can have a lot of fun with these things. Thanks for watching. It's much appreciated. If you could take the time to click on the notification bell, like and subscribe to the channel, all of that stuff, because I have been trying really hard lately to try and boost my YouTube channel up in the algorithm. So if you like the content, by all means, like it, share it, do all that stuff. I really do appreciate it. I do read the comments, so if you have a comment, if you enjoyed the video, post something up. If you think I'm full of crap, you can post that too. I don't take it personally, unless you come gunning for me personally, and then I'm just going to ignore you. But thanks for watching. Until I see everyone next time, ride safe.